be a baby, right? If you're being a baby, so obviously if you've ever heard that before, you you know that it's usually not meant to be a compliment. It's usually it's a put down. Typically, it's saying that you're either like whining or you're you're not dealing with something in a way that's very positive. A person perceives that. So, but be a baby. So let's think about it for a second. And the reason why I'm saying like being a baby, not such a bad thing. There's a few things that like we lose when we're no longer babies that, or we unlearn, I guess, through the process of growing up, and that is kind of taken from us, I guess, a lot of times with a force field of our parents or of our environment or our friends or our schooling or whatever. And by force field, I mean like that it's not something that you see. It's kind of an invisible. Other people, look at it as the strength because you're trying to learn a bunch of other things, but in that process, you kind of unlearn a bunch of things as well. It's like I'm going to go through 10 things that I think if you were more like a baby, it would be better. It's like for starters, babies are very like they seem to have a pretty good imagination. They're pretty creative, and I don't mean like a baby. I mean like a young person, like under the age of an infant, pretty much, or a child under the age of 5. So they're usually pretty creative. You can give them a box, they sit there and they'll play in it like it's a starship or something. They can use their imagination in really creative ways. They're good at feeling something fully, and they can play make-believe. They play well. So I think that's really important because we've heard a lot of people that are incredible people say imagination and creativity is actually more important than intelligence, which is kind of crazy. But again, like a baby or that early, childhood years, people are pretty creative. So that's one. Two, they're fearless relative to failure, kind of like their failure, almost like they're not aware of it. It seems like, but they are too at the same time. They're not concerned though whether or not they're going to fail. And so in that way, they're fearless. And then through failure and like other people's feedback on failure, we usually kind of become worried about failure, depending on, again, what our environment is. But most kids use failure as a tool to learn. And so they get good at that. But they're not worried about the failure. Problem solvers. We're better problem solvers. Most kids, through that creativity, they're figuring things out. It's why a kid will often ask why. Hey, don't do that. Why? They really, 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 really want something, and so they're trying to figure it out. Right? They're great problem solvers. That's a great thing. And unfortunately, we kind of, as a parent, a lot of times as a coach, teacher, trainer, we kind of like repress that, and that's not. It's understandable why we do it, but it's also not necessarily the greatest thing. They're natural learners. They're independent natural learners too. And that independence that they have, a lot of times we force them into other situations where we, again, suppress that independence and that, that natural learning kind of situation. They're hungry. They're naturally hungry. That's another one. And when needed, they know when they're hungry, and they're not afraid to like cry out about it, like I'm hungry. They can forget about it too, but like they know, I need to eat. So, and they're hungry about their appetite for things too, not just food, but for the things they want to learn about, the things they want to do, the things they want to play. They're also incredible adaptation devices or instruments. Obviously they're people, they're not instruments, they're not devices, but like that's kind of what they take on. And so they're very, very adaptable. And then we lose that along the way often. But the early childhood, they get that. They're able to adapt. Next one, they know how to make themselves happy. They know how to experience joy and love, and that's why I think a lot of people, they'll look at like children and they're just like, oh, they're so cute, or they're so cuddly, or just like it's puppy or something like that, that the person is. But it's because that person has more pure joy in their life, and so that's what they radiate. That's the energy around them. And so even like if they go to the bathroom, sometimes people are like, oh, that's so cute. But I mean, like a poopy diaper isn't really super cute. But so you kind of just deal with it, and it's because of the positive energy that's, you know, that person radiates. They're clear on their vision. Again, like they know what they want for the most part. And they're not afraid to like stick to it until they get it. That's why it's like, man, is this kid gonna give up already? You know, are they gonna just keep pushing for what they want? And again, something that gets suppressed over time that we try to like, hey, listen, you're not gonna get that, or you can't get that, or you have to be reasonable, or you know, how many, you know, they're impulsive as well, but they're also passionate about things too. Not just necessarily their impulses, but they're in tune with what they want. I would say this is at an early age, they're excuseless, meaning they're not going to tell you, they're not going to make up some reason why they did something at an early age, because they're not worried about what you think, right? But then once they become worried about what you think, then, because they're still creative usually, they're going to make up excuses because they realize you're looking for a different outcome or different feedback. So again, that's from learning like what it is that you're looking for. They get really clear on who their audience is and what they want to hear, what they want. So they're feeding you what they want. What they think that you want to be fed. Okay, so, but they won't make up an excuse until they realize that you're not happy with what happened. Like they could fail on something and they're not busy making up excuses about it. They're gonna try it again. But if they feel like you're gonna be judgmental about it, then they might make up an excuse, but only at that point. Prior to that, it doesn't happen. It's very difficult to find that. And then the last thing is confidence to ask for help. And I'm not talking about being dependent upon somebody else, because that's what happens a lot of times through our development years. People kind of create kids that are dependent on other people to do certain things, and you know that kind of takes away from their independence. But they're not afraid to ask for help if they need help. If they don't feel like they need help, they won't ask for help, right? But if they feel like you can be helpful for them, they'll ask. It's only after you say no, or you make them feel you belittle them, or you make them feel like they're foolish or something, that they eventually will stop asking for help. And at that point, then you have a lot of work to do in order to get them back on track. So the next time somebody says you're being a baby, think about, you know, it might not be such a bad thing.